Welcome back to Have You Heard, the social media podcast by us here at The Social Shepherd. Today, we are going to be talking about influencer marketing, and I'm joined by
Hannah, Creative Partnerships Manager.
And Lucy, Influencer Director.
Cool. So for those of you who don't know as well, my name is Zoe. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here. And I think one other thing to kind of caveat after introducing you guys is just that we kind of split our influencer team in two. And it's a little bit of a controversial split as well, because we're very, very clear that not all creators are influencers, but all influencers are creators. Isn't that correct, Lucy?
You tell them, Zoe.
Yeah. But I guess it'd be good to kind of explain to the team why we have that split and what is different about the two. Do you want to take that, Luce?
Yes, like you can be a creator and you can be an influencer. You can be, it's all kind of like interchangeable. I don't know what I'm kind of saying.
Like really all influencers are creators because they have to create content.
Yeah.
But not all creators are influencers.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, in theory, almost like anyone can be a creator as such when you're talking about social media per se. So like TikTok, for example, if you're creating content on there, you can in theory be classed as a creator, but you may not necessarily be an influencer of sorts. You may not necessarily have a huge audience or anything like that. You may not necessarily hold influence over a particular subject matter, but we have two very kind of clear streams that we kind of define talent, I guess. So yeah, you've got your traditional social media influencers who have an audience, they hold influence about particular subject matters and what have you, they create content about it. Our creators, which we very specifically now call UGC Creators, are people who they may not have a huge audience necessarily, but they know how to create really great social media content and they've got a portfolio that reflects it. And it's just really important that it's understood there are two very specific streams, and we'll work with influencers to influence their audience by working with different brands. And then we'll work with our UGC creators to create content for brand social channels.
Yeah, so I think like to me, influencer marketing is a marketing channel as such. And then UGC creators are a component of your content marketing strategy on social.
Exactly.
Stunning. Well, we've been given an interesting headline to discuss today. And it is influencer marketing dead?
Yes. No, I'm joking.
I think I want to tweak that a little bit. I think is influencer marketing as we know it dead? And I think like preface that because the industry's been changing so much. And I think we've got more channels that we work with, and there's so much of a difference between a YouTube influencer versus a TikTok influencer versus an Instagram influencer versus a LinkedIn influencer versus someone that has all those platforms going. So I think it's more complicated now. And I also don't think that you can it's not just talent that influencer is. Like, you know, we've always had, but it's even more so prevalent now with the likes of TikTok and the way that algorithm works, like online accounts that have influence. So like that Gnome account, we'll insert a picture of the Gnome account here. It's amazing.
I sent this to you, didn't I?
Yeah, but like that has a huge following. It's a faceless account. It's just someone with mini gnomes.
It's just little gnomes going about their lives and fun scenarios.
And then like Sylvanian Drama, like L'Oreal just did a partnership with them. Like that is digital influence. And I think it's in the sense of they have quite a broad audience that find that content relevant. And I think relevancy is the key there, is that if a brand partners with something like Sylvanian Drama, you're like, okay, they get it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's going to appeal to a specific audience. So yeah, I've gone on a bit of a rant, but that's kind of my thought on the statement. I guess, how do you take the statement, influencer marketing is dead?
I mean, I'd say it's not. It's more, like you say, it's just bigger now. And I think it keeps on changing. And the way that we're currently working with influencers or creators and the like currently, it's just going to evolve over time. So we went to Creator Fest
we did.
a month or so ago. And there was a really great talk with Dominic Smales, who was the founder of Gleam, Sam Chapman from Pixie Woo, and GK Barry, pre-Jungle. And they were talking about like 10 years of influencers and the industry and everything, which is like my specialist subject. I love it because I was at university, or I was even at sixth form, watching the likes of Sam Chapman on YouTube and seeing her go and do a vlog meeting Dom Smales and then Gleam formed and everything like that. So like I'm very invested in it and everything, but how influencer marketing was back then, which kind of wasn't 100% necessarily a thing, it's completely different now, where you've kind of had the likes of GK Barry, who in lockdown, she had a proper kind of 15 minutes of fame, in theory, rise very, very quickly within the space of like 6 months. The likes of Sam Chapman, it kind of was a bit of a slow burner, and then it really blew up for her, and similar people that she was kind of associated with. And now, you have got all these different platforms like TikTok, where you can go viral so much more quickly, and you yourself can suddenly really become kind of more of a known person online. And there's just more kind of capabilities, I guess, in the space of social media these days to become some form of an influencer per se. And there were lots of conversations around like, you know, AI and like, what's the future of influencer marketing look like? I know Sam Chapman was kind of saying she thinks it's all going to kind of go backwards and we'll go back to like print media, which I wasn't sure on at the time.
That's a really interesting explain.
But the more I think about it, I understand where she's coming from, because maybe there's this kind of fatigue that people are going to get to with how brands work with influencers, or how we consume social media content, that actually maybe with the likes of things like vinyl that have really kind of risen again in terms of media in the last, 5-10 years, I guess, maybe something like print media could really make a bit of a resurgence. And I would say, having looked into it, print media is actually seeing a bit more of a rise. I'm not saying kind of, Vogue and Heat magazine are going to suddenly become like the most popular media formats per se, but perhaps there's this element of people just want that sense of nostalgia. They want something physical in their hands.
Oh my God.
But also,
I used to do door drops in my first job.
Of what?
Well,
I know.
do you know door drops? Like, you would like say, "Oh, I want to reach people," and then you would go to a data library. They would give you a list of postcodes of people that are within like a certain age range. No, am I like speaking? Like, does anyone listening remember that? I'm not even that much older than you, Hannah.
I have no idea what you're on about.
You know, like when you get leaflets through your door.
Yeah.
Those are door drops.
Okay. But who did you used to do them for?
Brands.
Just anyone? They just used to be like, oh, can you
Yeah,
go
you'll
and...
have to like bleep this, but like used to do them for them.
Okay.
Some phone companies.
And it would be like discounts and stuff, like branded to kind of promote.
Yeah. And mini leaflets can also be considered door drops as well. Anyone that's trying to reach like the OAPs would do a lot of door drops traditionally.
It's given newspaper. Like, do you know what I mean? Like people
Or
doing...
like old school, like guy on the bike.
I can imagine you like throwing your leaflets at the
I
doors.
didn't deliver the door drops.
Oh, I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah, I could picture you like going.
I thought you were like
door to
going
door.
and like pushing letters through people's
I worked
doors.
for a company that designed and came up with a strategy. I didn't. I'm not working for
Paper
Paper Mail.
Silly with a little
So you're
satchel
like 16, like, yeah, knocking on the door and being like, Julie.
on your bike. Good Lord. That's a good set.
Sorry, Lucy, we interrupted your flow.
It's all good. Basically, more traditional, old school formats may see a bit of a resurgence, is what Sam Chapman was trying to say.
Do you think they'll see a digital spin though? Like, will we see newspapers and magazines, but they'll be on your phone as like a subscription rather than in live print? Do you know what I mean?
I think her perspective was more in the sense of maybe, particularly in the beauty space, which is what she's known for, is, what am I trying to say? It's so oversaturated with creators, influencers and everything. Whereas actually, because there's so many opinions and it's like, you need to use this type of ingredient to get this kind of result and everything. There's so many people creating that kind of content that I think her perspective was people are probably looking for more authoritative voices and people who really do know their stuff to kind of lead more from that like editorial, like voice of authority kind of perspective.
I could kind of see that in a way, that I think everyone's getting a bit more purposeful about how they curate their online, like what they consume and stuff, you know, like people more now are using like the reset function on TikTok, for example, so they can reset their algorithm. And I think
Have you done that?
I do it all the time.
Really?
Oh, really?
Mine just defaults to like business. And then like at the weekends, I'm like, we need to reset this. And then by Monday it goes back to it.
I saw a really scary TikTok that was like, don't do it. Like, you will see all sorts.
Yeah, I mean, you do. But
it's like a scary side of TikTok.
I need to take a break. Sometimes I do have to delete it off my phone for a day or two.
Just
like
for a
I
break.
am
Fair enough.
a TikTok girly. But no, I do think people are getting more purposeful. And if we look at Pinterest updates and kind of the way lots of brands are kind of eking what Pinterest are doing and trying to bring it to their platforms, is people being like, okay, I like that, and kind of curating all the bits of information and aesthetics that they like to kind of curate their own unique persona or vibe, basically, that they kind of want to move forward to. And I do see people are getting a little bit overstimulated by the amount of information out there and the amount of content out there, that just kind of like, okay, I'm going to take what I want and I'm going to ignore what I don't want, and then I'm going to move forward with that.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can see that definitely happening. And then, in that kind of influencer creator space, I guess it's just people becoming even more specific about who they want to follow and what type of content they want to see and everything. I mean, I don't know. I guess one thing I'm really interested in at the moment is kind of this concept of like legacy creators having this revival and resurgence.
I love.
So like, I know this is all very cliche with these examples I'm going to say, but like Zoella obviously had her resurgence over the last like 18 months or so. Like she really has kind of, she's still getting millions of views, which says so much about the audience and the brand she has been able to build over the last 10 plus years online. Like people are still tuning in to watch her content, and the likes of Tanya Burr having a bit of a resurgence, and Estee Lalonde, and these are all people that I follow and everything, of course. But I think it's really interesting to see those kinds of people almost make a bit of a like comeback online, and where there are now so many influencers and almost anyone can be a creator. These people who maybe for a period of time had a bit of a dip and weren't as popular as they once were, they've been able to kind of find their way back into popularity and continue to really engage their audiences. So where you've got then the likes of things like Substack, that's really rising in popularity, I find really interesting as well, because a lot of these legacy creators have gone to Substack and been able to take an even more engaged audience with them, and in some cases pay to give them exclusive content. And I think it is just about being a bit more purposeful, both for the influencer / creator and the audience. And I think that's probably where things are going to go moving forward.
I think the reason that that's happening is because like people are literally just craving, like, I don't want to use the word, but like authenticity is kind of one of the words, but also like people that have worked for it and kind of have earned the right to that influence. Because I think if we look at, you know, UGC creators weren't as much of a thing if we go back like 2-3 years ago now. And the reason that they've become more of a thing is because of how the TikTok algorithm works. Because the views that content gets is defined by the content, not by the amount of following that you have. And equally because of just like the cost analysis, basically, that they probably existed, but they weren't as often used by brands. If you had an influencer, for example, and you wanted to, they posted and then you put Spark ads behind it, you're paying twice for that piece of content. Whereas whenever you use a content creator, yes, you pay the content creator, but the fee is significantly lower than it would be for an influencer. And you're probably going to get longer usage rights from a paid media perspective. And also there's so many other add-ons nowadays. So you've got your TikTok shop affiliate commissions on there. You've got your Amazon affiliate commissions on there. We can boost that content. So I think the opportunity for influencers, that has kind of taken a piece of the cake away from influencers because they're not needed to fulfill that hole anymore. Whereas influencers now have to have like true depth and relationship with their communities, or they have to be just so well known from like a specific type of creative execution. So I think it's just becoming a little bit more segmented in that way. And I think it's probably harder to become an influencer. I think the entry point is content creator now. And then you would work your way up to influencer.
Yeah.
Well, like, again, a lot of those people on TikTok who really blew up in lockdown, for example, I don't want to say any names, but I think some of them, they had a couple of years of popularity and now have kind of fallen off a little bit. And I guess it was so quick and easy to get to that point of kind of virality and to be known and everything. Suddenly they've massively plateaued, and I think brands are starting to kind of actually, some of those creators were probably a bit more like brave to work with if you were a brand because they're a little bit more controversial and everything, whereas now they have kind of like fallen off a cliff a little bit.
I think if you're not saying anything of like substance, then you are going to fall off. Like, not to be savage, but like the D'Amelios, for example, like they're not really saying anything of substance. And like back in the day, like they were doing the Dunkin' Donuts partnerships and reviving that brand, and the Abercrombie partnership as well. And they did some really cool stuff, and everyone was like, wow, like this is how you use influencer marketing. But now they're not really being recognized in that way. And to be fair, I don't think they're focused on what they're doing. You know, they're looking at other pursuits. But they're not saying anything of substance.
Do you know who has been clever?
Who?
Addison Rae.
You love Addison, but she's a singer now. I wouldn't even call her an influencer.
I know, but I think that's like I think she must be so switched on. Maybe I'm being too kind.
I kind of feel like you can compare her with like GK Barry's success though. Like in the same way that they like utilized that opportunity as a creator in the first place. And now they're more like mainstream celeb, like grasping opportunities. GK Barry going into the jungle, Addison Rae doing a music career.
But it's like finding that entry point.
Yeah.
And so it's like GK Barry was really polarizing, really funny whenever she came on. Addison Rae, kind of the same, got caught up in that. What was that house called that they had?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, the house thing, like Bryce Hall, like all that drama. If we look at Alex Cooper, for example, like her entry point was talking about sex and relationships and like some pretty like raunchy stuff. And then she just interviewed the vice president of the United States. And it's like everyone kind of finds their entry point. And then they go, okay, how do I get from here to where I really want to be, basically? And I think that is the main thing for influencers, is to find that point of entry. Grace Fit, for example, like Grace Beverly was Grace Fit UK.
She was the first influencer I ever worked with.
Really?
Yeah.
Good vibes?
Well, I guess it was all through like her agent and everything, of course. It wasn't directly, but it was great. And I vividly remember that moment, like that first piece of content ever went live. I was ironically in the gym when it went live.
Of course you were.
I remember seeing her YouTube video go live, and I was like, I was super excited. But like, it is super cool to see someone like her who I think has been so focused, and she easily could have carried on with the whole Grace Fit brand,
but it
and
didn't
everything.
feel authentic to her at that point in time.
And she saw an opportunity and was super focused, and she's gone for it. And she just keeps appearing to go from strength to strength by the looks of it. And I think that's the thing. It's like, if you kind of find that entry point as a creator, you get the success from it. If you want to maintain that momentum, you just have to be focused and keep thinking of, how can I keep evolving? How can I keep growing and giving this audience I've created what they want and what I want and everything as well.
Yeah, agree. You know, I had a really savage statement the other day. You're both going to hate me for saying it, is that people that work in social are just people that wanted to be influencers and didn't make it.
I used to say this. So, right, do you know it's like drama teachers and everything? Sorry, this is so savage. But it's kind of like, if you failed actor, isn't it?
If you can't teach.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So when there was that poster we did the other week and it was like baby, like what we look like as kids and everything. Yeah. And I actually said like, this was what I wanted to be growing up, which was princess, then pop star.
What do you mean, princess? That's, you were 2 when you said that.
I don't care. I wanted to be a princess. Then I wanted to be a pop star. Then I wanted to be a fashion designer. That was a bit rogue. Then I wanted to be an actress. And then suddenly I'm in I feel like this all says something about who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And I'm now in influence marketing.
Yeah. I did actually want to be a teacher.
Okay.
So
you're not proving our theory.
No, I'm not.
What did you want to be?
My ideal would have been to be a TV presenter, which
well,
is kind of proving that, to be fair.
Presenter.
So like, yeah, I did also want to be a pop star at one point. I had a Bebo that was like, Britney Spears was like the little cover photo on it, and it would be like, this is why Lucy and I vibe. But it was like, I want like baby Princess Britney or something of that nature. And I would like my best friend Kirsten from school can attest to this. Like I would just sit and watch videos of Britney Spears like on YouTube all day long. I was obsessed.
God.
And then it went to Jessie McCartney.
This makes so much sense. Knowing you, this makes so much sense.
And then I went through a period of being obsessed with Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, fam.
And like had all the Hannah Montana albums, loved it.
Love that. I had Ashley Tisdale on my Bebo. I loved Ashley Tisdale. He said, she said. Anyway, sorry.
So I guess, do you think that's true? I'll ask you because you're non-biased. Do you think everyone that works in social is and would ideally be an influencer if they could be?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I think that working in social, you just have a vision, and that's just like a creative output.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's parallels between those two career types.
Yeah.
Where creativity flourish.
Yeah, I agree.
So I can kind of get it. Like, I would love to be a UGC creator, personally. I think it's a great career. But I don't know. No, I don't think it is.
Because there's also a thing as well, like I find it personally, like give me any brand, I can craft like a social strategy for them and a creative strategy and an identity. My own socials, get them away from me. I hate it. I find it really difficult.
I really struggle these days. I used to, back in the day when I attempted to be a blogger, I was so like curating, and I love kind of like posting and making content and everything like that. Because also no one in real life followed me. Whereas now everyone I know follows me. It's a bit like, I feel so embarrassed. I don't know. It's really troubling. You're very good at it.
I feel like we need to go to therapy.
Another round.
Oh dear. So on that note and topic, no, that was really funny, Lucy. Well done. If a brand came, what do you see? And this isn't going to be a yes or no question by any means. What do you see more value in for brands? Investing in creators or investing in influencers? And that's a difficult question to answer.
I think they hold their own within their own segments. Yeah. Like there's value in working with both, but there's two different strategies with working with each of them.
Monetary value. Where are you going to see the biggest ROI?
I would say creators in that respect, though, because I think
is that because of what we talked about earlier with being able to pile on additional costs to get more out of that content in a more cost-effective way than you can with influencers?
I feel like you can be a bit more cost efficient with it. I guess because the perspective I'm taking here is because if you're working with UGC creators is lower cost compared to influencers. And in theory, if you want to be using that content to build trust with an audience, which it will absolutely do, you can then in theory get that reach by using that content through paid social, for example. Like I see it from that perspective, there's more value in it there because you can get a higher volume of content and be kind of getting different messages out. You can be very tactical with it. But then I guess on the flip, you can literally work with one influencer and oh my goodness, it goes viral and you have working with creators is more predictable. Working with influencers is less predictable, but you can see such significant success from that, the absolute right influencer partnership. You can see, almost it is insane how much you can kind of get from the right sort of influencer partnership. Mm-hmm. It's tricky.
Yeah, no, that is a tricky one. And then when we look at platforms, so if you had a brand, okay, and I don't know, they're targeting a very broad audience, 30 to 50-year-olds, 25 to 50-year-olds, very broad audience. What platform out of TikTok and Instagram would you invest your influence marketing budget?
TikTok.
I'd probably say the same.
I personally would say the same, just because I think the content's more trusting. Yeah. I've kind of like I hate it. It kills my soul whenever I see the like single image grid post, like product on the counter. Like, I've been feeling like my head hurts recently, so I took this vitamin. Like, awful. Yeah. And I stories would probably be where I would prioritize, maybe on Instagram. But again, the one hit wonders on Instagram are just so bad.
Exactly. It's really tricky with stories, though. I sometimes find like you really need to know, if you're going to work with an influencer on stories, you really need to know that influencer and be quite like on top of what they are creating on stories yourself. Because if you just kind of take a look at an account, think, oh yeah, it'd be good, get some stories deliverables with them. I don't know, like you need to be working with people who are very, very active on stories, I think, to see that level of
I agree. And it's also almost like finding like those core influencers that, you know, you don't even have to have them on an ambassador program, but you know that they work for you, and you go, okay, we have our Black Friday sale, so we're going to invest in a set of stories and XYZ from this person, because we know that they deliver time and time again, and almost they become a channel in themselves, and they become just part of like, we know this person works. We'll do some explorative influencer work over here to test out some new talent and see if we can add more channels into our mix. But ultimately, it's about like finding what works for that audience and being like really smart about it. And people are just so lazy whenever it comes to influencer.
Do you know what? And I was going to say, I think actually just reflecting on everything, an influencer marketing strategy really does not have to be that complicated. It's literally I think actually the most important thing is knowing who you're trying to reach, knowing who your customers are, and them building around it. Because if you're, I don't know, I've seen so many influence strategies, and I'll probably hold my hands up and sort of say, like, I probably delivered influence strategies. I'm kind of like, that was a little bit too complicated. It could have been way more simpler than that.
I think generally marketing is like simple but smart.
Yeah,
like, that
exactly.
is like the rule of it.
It's just a case of like, okay, who do we want to reach? We want to reach these kind of people. What do we know about like doing customer profiling exercises and knowing a little bit more about who you're trying to reach and engage with and what have you. And therefore understanding, okay, so who do they kind of associate themselves with? Or not even that, like who is creating content that resonates with that particular audience? And then kind of going from there. It doesn't really need to be a case of, we're going to deliver this influence campaign. It's all going to be on Instagram. Everyone has to do a reel and a story set or anything like that.
Go where the audience is.
And what the influencer is creating themselves that performs well. It doesn't always have to be this like cookie cutter approach. It's just a case of, hey, this person's great. They do really great content. Their audience aligns with who we're trying to reach and everything. What kind of deliverables would make most sense for them to kind of engage with that?
And I agree with that. But sometimes my biggest pet hate, and sometimes clients do this, is where they'll go, you know, you'll find an influencer that holds influence over a specific audience, but they don't look like that audience. So they might be older, they might be younger, they might be a different gender, for example. And they go, yeah, that person doesn't look like our audience, or like, oh, I just don't know. And we're like, but you don't have to be a member of an audience to have influence over an audience, particularly when you're talking about demographics. That is just way too old school for us to even be looking like demographic marketing at this point in time, particularly with how algorithms work, is pretty poor if you're leaning on that. And I think people have gotten quite lazy, to be entirely honest.
It's important to understand that demographic, but yeah, don't shape your whole strategy around, right, this is what this demographic is about, so therefore this is how we're going to do it. Or
I think if your demographic is based on needs, so say, for example, you have a product that people only need, like, I don't know, period care for people that have just started their period. There's going to be a window of opportunity for that where they're not going to need that product anymore, and when they're going to start needing that product. So that is when something like demographic comes in. Or, for example, Viagra. like, you know, there's probably a part of a, you know, a demographic situation going on there, and not necessarily wholly, you know, everyone probably needs some help at some point in their life, but like there's probably part of demographic that sits within that audience strategy there, but it's through the needs of the product. If you're just going, oh, I want to target 25 to 30-year-olds because I feel like it, that doesn't make any sense. Go interest-based first.
Yeah, for sure.
And don't go like expected interest. Like even, and we see this in paid media as well, when people go after the really sort of samey interests and like the expected ones, like, okay, yeah, it's going to go okay. But like when we had B-Bombs, which was one of the first clients that we had, the winning audience that worked for them was people interested in Vogue and gardening. And gardening makes sense. Vogue on paper does not. Why does it make sense? People that read Vogue are more likely to be of a higher affluence and ever so slightly older if they're still invested in that type of traditional media at that point in time. Therefore, it is more likely that they have a garden to be able to actually plant the B-Bombs in. And it's like thinking more strategically. And that's a really simple example. And like the team stack weird and wacky interests all the time to get to those winning components. But influencer marketing is the same, and think more strategically about where your influence is.
Each week in our team catch up, we share examples of content we've seen or things we've seen that are like relevant for our team and everything. And I swear like 9 times out of 10, I'm always sharing an example from like probably like an old man or an old lady or something. It's like grandparents. And I'm like, I love it. But it's like, it's all like young people engaging with the content.
Jeffrey Walk.
Yeah.
Do you follow Jeffrey Walk?
No, I don't. But
I need to show you afterwards. Okay. Bless Jeffrey and Pauline Walk. I love them so much. They could influence me tomorrow.
This week I shared an example from a cat. I was like, I mean, well, look.
Cat?
Yes, a cat. It was promoting one of those like robot vacuum cleaners. And I was like, I'm sold. Yeah. I'm not a cat. I wish I was. But like,
well,
I'm sold. I'm invested. Like, you don't have to look like it.
And the gnome that we talked about earlier. I am not a gnome. Oh, life as a gnome would be great.
Yeah, I think you'd be really good at it. So.
You'd make a great gnome.
One thing that we haven't talked about is like making your audience influencers. And I think, so Refi did a really good example of this where they took a whole lot of audience members and members of their online community that weren't traditionally influencers on a brand trip. And I think what's enabled this to happen is the way algorithms have changed. So it's based on the content, not necessarily the amount of followers that you have. You've got FYP page on, or FYP feed on TikTok, for example. So I think this is great. And I love that people are doing this. Do you guys think this is going to continue?
I think brands will take interest from it, and they should do. But it's kind of like, again, we were talking about this the other week, like just because you're classed as a bit of a disruptor brand or whatever. So your Oatleys, your Surreals, your, what's the other one? Liquid Deaths of the world. Just because they're doing it doesn't mean you therefore should absolutely be doing it as well. Take inspiration from it and think, actually, yeah, is there potential in bringing my customers into the mix in terms of creating content? Maybe customer generated content is a new thing.
Ooh.
Over UGC, because I feel like UGC is quite different to actual customer directed content, if that makes sense. There is a difference. You're right.
I think, do you think Refi got what they wanted to as in terms of KPIs from that trip? And they got a shit ton of PR for it. So I think that is positive from that perspective.
Yeah, I think they probably generated quite a lot of content just because of who their audience is as well. Like their consumers are that aesthetic, like beauty loving lifestyle creator kind of people, I guess. So their Instagrams themselves as purchases of Refi products will already be curated feeds, you would assume. So I would have thought they would have got quite a lot out of taking those individuals from their community on the trip, just from content that was generated by the consumer themselves.
Do you think the objective would have been content generated or just community buy-in?
Well, I was going to say they've probably... Surely what they got from that was such a solid group of advocates for the brand.
Yeah.
And then I think their audience then seeing, oh, we rewarded our customers and took them on this trip.
That could be me next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you get more kind of... a bit more respect, I guess, if you are part of that community and thinking, oh, like, yes, thank you for, rather than sending all these influencers who probably go on umpteen brand trips a year, rather than putting all your money there, you actually kind of said, you know what, we really value our customers and our community. It's probably the respect side and that community buy-in, I would say. Definitely.
And I think, like you said, they got such a lot of positive press from it. Yeah. Like that in itself would be a great return in investing in something like that, taking your community on a trip.
Yeah, agree. I think investment in community is going to be a huge one. If we look at how Instagram is going, it's trying to become more of a community platform.
Yeah,
I think people are missing that. Like, bring back Facebook groups. No?
Wow, what a throwback.
Yeah.
That is a throwback.
Jack's entire first business was based on Facebook groups. He just built up these huge groups, basically, and there's so much value in them because everyone had push notifications.
Yeah.
Very true.
Now you turn them off. Like, don't bother me.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you're going to both hate me for this question. So for anyone listening to this that maybe hasn't got a UGC creator strategy as part of their, content output, they're gifting product. So I'm going to give you an example. They're gifting product that is worth £250. How much? You can give a bracket, not a huge bracket. Are you paying UGC creators for one output?
For specifically like a reel or a TikTok?
A TikTok and then a reel.
They kind of within the same bracket.
Okay.
So between 150 to like 200.
Okay. And is that pretty consistent? Do you get pushback on that fee a lot?
No, not really, to be honest. It's kind of industry standard. Quite a lot of creators who we outreach as new creators, we'll often ask like for their input on what they would usually like request for that type of deliverable. And we're mostly aligned, to be honest. It's quite on the par,
And we do this sometimes, particularly if it's a high value product. But how do you feel about brands whenever they say, oh, well, we just won't pay the creators?
Yeah, I think there's value in rewarding people. And I understand that them being gifted the product is a great opportunity to work with that brand in terms of like generating the content. But ultimately, the use and that content beyond that partnership with that creator is for the brand to use. Therefore, the value in it is kind of everlasting for a period of time. Like there's definitely value in recognizing that creative ability and why you're working with them, not just, oh, well, we're going to gift you something so we get something in return.
It's also like treating, the top X% of creators will move on to be influencers, for example, and also, respect people and respect their time a little
precisely. But I think as well, creators themselves, like actually UGC creators are there is a community of them
there is.
Online, and they create a lot of content about being UGC creators. Yeah. They talk just like influencers talk and everything. So if you're a brand reaching out to a bunch of influencers saying, hey, we're going to gift you this, we're expecting XYZ in return or whatever, those influencers will be talking. If you're a UGC creator as well, they talk amongst one another and they're all very transparent about what it takes, what it entails, what they're being paid and everything. There's a bunch of creators I've come across recently who are doing whole videos, literally breaking down kind of brief by brief what they earned and everything. So
you don't want to be the brand that gets called out for treating influencers or creators badly. I think when a brand comes to us, and we see this a lot, unless, like we said, your product is high ticket and, it will cost someone a couple, like hundreds to go out and purchase. If a brand comes and says, we're just going to do gifted product, I'm like, oh, you want a seeding strategy then?
Yeah.
Like that is the difference there.
Yeah.
You can't have control or promise for output if you're not paying, again, unless it's high ticket.
Yeah.
Is that aligned with where you guys sit?
Definitely.
I think so, yeah, for sure. I think there's value in working with creators and those higher end products where you kind of like, maybe there's an opportunity to build like a long-term partnership there where you say, okay, you're going to create 6 deliverables for us. The first 3 will be on the basis that we're gifting you this product, and the following 3 will be paid for. And
yes, provided that we see the output that we want to see. Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's a nice way of looking at doing it. And Lucy, how do you approach negotiations and kind of standard fee setting, and I know that you will say it's not, there's no kind of standard metric for it.
There's not,
for influencers.
no, but I guess it is important, particularly when you're working with influencers, to really be delving into example performance insights to understand kind of what are they consistently delivering, what could that brand then be getting in return for those rates. So actually delving a little bit deeper into like what's the estimated CPM, cost per reach, engagement, click, whatever it is that your main objective is and everything. I mean, having kind of worked with influencers for quite a while now, I'm pretty clued up myself in terms of what to expect in return. And absolutely, we sometimes get rate cards and I'm just thinking, you're bonkers. Like,
what's
you're
like
having
what's the wildest like rate that you've been
60K
for
a video?
And how many followers did they have?
I'm gonna say, in fairness, they were a celebrity, but even on social, they probably had no more than 1 million followers, which, like, I'm sorry, but 60K,
That's a lot.
that's just bonkers. It is.
No, I know it is, but like the fees go wild, don't they?
They do.
I mean, but for one video, that is a lot. And I guess where you get into like the hundreds of thousands is like your longer term partnerships, for example.
Yeah.
And they can be off that value sometimes.
But I think as well, like, one really cool thing to remember is just the value of relationship building when it comes to influencers and creators, because sometimes when you just go in cold and say, hello, I've got this great opportunity with this brand, we'd love to consider so-and-so for it. Would they be interested? Whatever. Like, there is a lot of kind of warming up you need to do rather than sometimes going in cold, because that's when you do get those wild rates and everything. And if I'm quite honest, I remember that particular scenario and it was a bit of a like, oh goodness, we haven't got tons of time here. We're going to have to just figure something out. And that was a rate that came back. But when you're kind of warming and building those relationships with creators, whether they're potential creators, influencers, whoever it may be, that's why kind of having this combination of the seeding side of things works really well, and having them on your PR list and inviting them to events or whatever.
And it's like
all
having
this kind
like
of stuff.
strategic comms. Like you want to get to a place where you can like have a call and be like, hey, so I've got this really cool opportunity. You'd be a great fit for it. Like, I know your audience insights. This is the budget that we have available. There's no flex to it. Are you interested? And like just having the people respect that as well.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we dance. It's like buying a house. It's like dancing around these negotiations. Like just put your cards on the table. Like people do respect that.
Yeah, exactly. Just be open and transparent, but also just
like smart at the same time.
Yeah. And just like value, like it does just sometimes it can take a little bit of time to warm up those relationships and everything. And then kind of with any kind of, you know, marketing strategy, you're not always going to see those results overnight. It's something that's going to evolve over time. And it's like influencer strategies. I saw something yesterday, I think, about it. Someone suggesting actually an influence strategy, really, you need to change it every like 3 to 6 months.
Oh my God. Social strategies in general these days, like I always say to clients, like the strategy we pitched to you today will not be the strategy that we need to be delivering in 3 to 6 months time. And it's like, it's our job as your agency to be consistently going, actually, this budget isn't best spent here. We need to move it into this service offering, or we need to move it into here. That is what your agency should be doing.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've agreed that influencer marketing isn't dead. There's just a lot to it, and I think people need to probably get a bit more clued up about it in certain areas. And
but don't overcomplicate it.
No,
though,
don't
at the same
overcomplicate.
time.
It is a complicated ecosystem, but once you understand it well enough, you shouldn't need to overcomplicate it. It's just getting that base knowledge in, and also like peek your head up above water. Like, don't just be sat there thinking like, oh, I think we should work with this influencer because I follow them. No, don't do that. Like research, learn about your audience. I think that's like the biggest, that's another annoying one that clients will do sometimes. They'll be like, I want to work with this influencer. Okay, why? Because I like them. Like, no. So I think it's just about making sure that you truly understand the ecosystem and you understand where your audience's attention is so that you can best influence them.
100%.
Stunning. All right. Thank you for joining me, guys. Sorry, gals. I'm not saying guys anymore. It's not inclusive. Thank you so much for listening, watching, however you have consumed this content. Please do like, subscribe. We post videos on a regular basis on this channel with lots of different topics that you will find interesting. So thank you very much and have a great day.